Debt must expand for the system to continue. Central banks print money, loan it to commercial banks at interest, who then loan it to you at a much higher interest rate. This process creates a never-ending feedback loop of debt creation. Where debt is created, more debt must be created in order to pay it off. The concept of interest makes it impossible for the system to ever be completely paid back. In the event it gets to a certain point, it would bring the entire financial system down. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's talk about debt today. In fact, I have a lot of topics to discuss today. Let's begin with this. You're looking at the delinquency rate specifically with cars right here, and you can see that it has gotten to the point of, hey, what do we got? Financial crisis. That's right. We are in the financial crisis part 2. Financial crisis part 2 is what I like to call the continuation of what we saw now coming on 10 years almost practically. And this here should prove to you that this is yet one more indicator that we are in the middle of the financial crisis part 2. This just happens to be one thing. I've shown you so many different indicators, whether it's the civilian labor force participation rate, whether it's all the debt that has been created, anything. You look at inflation rates and unemployment rates, even the real unemployment rates show you, but I actually like to see the civilian labor force participation rate. This happens to be just one thing. Then you look at this. Total debt balance and its composition. You can see that the debt has expanded to $12.58 trillion, heading back to a decade high. And this is just another statistic. When you look at the personal debt, or household debt, which has been accumulated over the years, it is astronomical. When you just see the chart, I mean, this only shows you back from 2003, but when you look at it over like a 50-year chart, for example, you get this huge wave that has occurred. And it doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon. It's just expanding and expanding. But it's not just the households. You can't blame individuals, because then you look on it at a provincial or a state level, depending on where you are. You look at it at the national level, massive expansions on the national level. I mean, every single level, corporate as well, they're just taking on more and more and more debt. Why? Won't anybody just pay off their debt? Why? Because it's not meant to be paid back. That's the whole point. And it just continues to expand and expand like a glutton, like a hoarder, to expand and get bigger and bigger and messier. And it's just hard to really get back to normal again, simply because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, getting worse and worse. And as it gets worse, well, then it gets worse. It's really bad at this time, and I don't see for the foreseeable future that it's going to get any better. I'm not just talking about the US. I mean, look at Europe, for example. Student debt payback far worse than believed. Guess what? The revised education department number shows that more than 1,000 schools, at least half of the students, defaulted or failed to pay down their debt within 7 years. Yes, they admitted that it wasn't so rosy. It wasn't all just rainbows and flowers. It was actually much worse. I'm glad to see the admission. Of course, this is what they do a lot of times with the job numbers and everything. They first post that number, okay, 200,000 jobs created. Then they revise it like a week later and say, oh, actually it wasn't 200,000, it's actually only 50,000. But the numbers are out. The stock market has already done its moves accordingly and everything else. And that's very, very interesting how they do that. This has happened many times before, in fact. This here is right from the Fed's website, from none other than Neel Kashkari. If you turn back the pages of history a little bit, he was actually there during the congressional hearings where they asked Neel Kashkari, they said, it's not that we don't trust that you're working hard. We just want to know who you're working for. And that's a little segue off. But this year, he actually said, somebody from the Fed actually said something that I agree with. And I'm talking about somebody at the Fed, not necessarily like a Greenspan or somebody else. Look at this. There's a straightforward way to help prevent the next financial crisis, fix the too big to fail problem, and still relax regulations on community lenders. This right here. Increase capital requirements. Hey, wouldn't that be excellent? To increase the capital requirements. Yes, you as an individual bank, you can't hold just 3%, 5 or 10% in some cases, of the amount of funds, total amount of funds that you're supposed to have. You'll have to hold on to a little bit more. Wow, what a concept. That the Federal Reserve is coming out there telling the commercial banks, you have to hold on to a little bit more money in those vaults. You can't gamble that much. I just thought it was a joke coming from the Fed, but, I'm going to point it out where I see it. This was very interesting. You probably read about it. CIA espionage orders for the 2012 French presidential election. I didn't read the entire document here, but I just read the caption. And essentially what we have is during the 2012 election, the CIA spied and actually did some deep investigations, tried to dig up some intel, let's say, from both human and I guess it seems like they were using some computerized models or something, but tried to see what was going on for the election. They didn't think that the president would be able to win, so they decided to dig into some other information. I think that's funny that the CIA sticking their nose into all different business and WikiLeaks bringing that out. I think it's just interesting to say the least how far the spy agencies from around the world are willing to go. This year, it's Mark Zuckerberg, everybody's favorite. I'm not even looking into what he said. If you look at this, I purposely searched for the word global, and it is said in this one small little post that he has, global is said 27 times. He's talking about building a global community. And in a sense, I do believe that we should have tolerance for everyone, peace, and love, essentially. I do not, however, agree with globalism as it's being brought on to us now. I also do not agree with global governance and any of the other mess like global government. Not allowed to say that. Global government, global governance, any of these things generally are not what they seem. Look at Agenda 21 and all that. Global army, global religion, global central bank, global currency, you've heard it all. When a big person like this, one of the wealthiest men in the world, starts talking about global community, what they're trying to do is basically tear down the borders in between nations. Not symbolically, in that, we need to get along, everyone. It starts to take a little bit of a turn, and it's basically propaganda is what it is. Trying to get people to accept a new definition of sovereignty. That I don't agree with. What they do is they say, look, you got to accept everybody. So There's all different types of propaganda. There's propaganda that says, look, don't let immigrants in, they're very bad. Then you have on the left, what they call the left, basically saying, look, you need to accept everyone. Let down your guard. Let us get in there. Just let us just sneak in a little bit of that sovereignty. Don't worry about it. And we're going to be able to make this world a better place. There's all different types of propaganda that's going on in front of our very eyes. If you can just, what I call, zoom out and see it. Ultimately, who stands to gain from any of the policies which we see? Who really stands to gain? I assure you, in anything that you see out there, anything, the bailouts, the bail-ins, all these different scams and schemes that we're being forced upon us, it's always the big corporations, the elite, the globalists. These are the ones that will ultimately always benefit. And that's why they try to get us into accepting globalism in the way that they project it, UN programs, Agenda 21, and the supranational entities like the IMF, who say, look, you gotta be fair, you gotta get some austerity, you gotta, pay your way and fair share and all this business, and then ultimately they end up just screwing everybody over. Well, I'm not going to accept it. Look, if it's being proposed by a government, being proposed by a supranational entity, the chances are I'm not going to believe it, I'm not going to accept it. It's just the way it is. I'd rather say no, as Dr. No, Ron Paul, he was willing to just say no every time when a bill came his way. Voting on it, he just said no. Because ultimately it's against everything to create all these regulations, these rules, these laws that always, always, always benefit them instead of us. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up. And if you found this video informative, and I know you will find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative, you could look through the book over at Amazon. They have a look inside feature that will allow you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care. I just did an interview with X22, so check for that. I believe it's going to post on Tuesday. So you can check that out definitely. I really think you guys are going to like it. I know many of you are also subscribers on there as well as here. So hopefully you will be able to join me on there. I will definitely be commenting as it posts. So look for that. I believe it should be Tuesday based on what he told me. Take care.